Today I'm going to show you how to build an amazing home network with Eero 7. There's a brand new lineup of 4 different models of Wi-Fi mesh routers and points, and this video is intended to be everything you could need to get that set up. I'll show you what you get and what you might need, how to decide where to place these and how many you'll need. We'll also show you how to set up and install your Eeros, including this outdoor version. And finally, I'll walk you through the management of your system and how to get some of the extra special features like a smart home hub working in your home. Let's give her. In case you didn't notice, this video is long. Now, it's intended to help you design your network, but everyone's home is a little bit different, so I can't give you every situation. Still, I'm gonna give you the knowledge that will let you go out and build a great network and design it well. So because this video is so long and because it is a guide, we have time codes all over this video. Jump around as you need different components. Now go ahead, bookmark this video and let's get started. Today, I'll be working with Eero Max and Eero Outdoor, but I've gathered all the information from the other units or the other models, and I'll still be able to guide you with those. Maybe the most important thing to know about this entire series of products is that they are all backwards compatible and compatible with each other. So if you have Eero 6 of any kind, you can actually upgrade part or all of your system. Plus, you can mix and match all of these Eero 7 models. So if you don't want to lay out all the money for a full Max system today, but still have Wi-Fi 7 in your home, you can do that. Some people think that Eero is the way you get access to the internet. They are not a replacement for your internet service provider and their modem. Instead, they are a replacement for your internet service provider's router. Eero provides a lot of benefits over and above those kinds of routers and even the mesh systems that you can get from your ISP. If you have a modem/router combo unit from your ISP, we'll talk about how to deal with that later in the video. Now, as I said, you can buy multiple Eeros and you can create a mesh Wi-Fi system as well as a wired Ethernet network in your home. You can do both at the same time too. Now, one thing I'll tell you, it is best to connect your Eero points together using Ethernet cables, but you don't necessarily have to do that, and we'll talk about some of the technology that helps with that. These do create a wireless mesh system, and they can communicate between each other entirely wirelessly. The only cable you for sure need is the one that goes between your first Eero and your ISP modem. Now, once installed, Eero has an app to help you manage your home network and all of the settings associated with this system. And since these are Wi-Fi 7, they can all broadcast at 2.4 and 5 gigahertz. Now that's for the Eero 7 and the outdoor unit. You get an additional frequency of 6 gigahertz for the Pro and Max units. Now, one additional component to Eero versus some other routers or mesh systems is that they are closely integrated with Amazon's voice assistant, Miss A. Now, each of these units is a smart home hub of sorts. You get Zigbee, Thread, and even Bluetooth and Matter on each of these. That's a big benefit, but the way it works is in conjunction with the Miss A app and your Echo or Echo Show speakers. Eero does have a subscription component, but you most certainly do not need to get that, and I've been living without it in my home. Here's what we got in the box with our Eero Max 7 units. I got a 2-pack, and you can buy up to 3 of these at the same time. Obviously you could buy more, but there's 3 packs available. It's pretty basic stuff. You're basically getting the power adapter and the cable for that, and then a single Ethernet cable that will get you connected to your home's modem. You'll probably get a little bit of paperwork in the box, and this is going to be typical no matter what you buy. That's because most of what you need is coming with the app. Now, even with the outdoor unit, we really just gained a little more complex power cable and a mount. Now, this unit is capable of power over Ethernet, and so you can wire this one in as well as use it wirelessly. Other than that, the outdoor unit comes with a little more paperwork because it needs a guide for installation. And you might be noticing that the outdoor unit is mountable on a wall. It has some pretty good temperature ratings and an IP66 outdoor weatherproof rating. I installed this outdoors initially at -30 Celsius, and yes, it worked just fine. Now the other units can only really stand on a table. There's no mounting that I've seen from Amazon, although there are usually aftermarket options that show up later. Before we go and set these up though, we need to have a short conversation about how many you're gonna need and where to place them around your home. The question of how many Eeros you will need and how to place them throughout your home is one of the most critical things to decide on. With proper coverage comes great networking. Kind of like Spider-Man. I did some measurements. I want to give you some insight into how you can best place these, but of course every home is different, so I can't cover all of the situations. Feel free to ask below about your specific situation. If you're the kind of person who just wants the basics here, 2 to 3 units are going to cover any home really well with all the different frequencies, okay? If your home is close to or larger than 2,000 square feet, I'm gonna recommend that you get 3 units. And if your home is around 1,500, a little larger, a little smaller, I think you can survive with 1 to 2 units. But let me explain what I found, as sometimes the devil is in the details. Eero Max is stated to be able to cover 2,500 square feet per unit. So if you purchase 2 of these, you should be able to cover 5,000 square feet in your home. The Eero and Eero Pro 7 versions cover a little less at 2,000 square feet per. So when I give you my numbers and my take on the situation, understand that you're getting about 25% more distance with Eero Max here in my home. These numbers that you see on Wi-Fi systems are related to what they can cover from a 2.4 gigahertz standpoint. For 2.4 gigahertz, I could pretty much go anywhere. And you'd have to get about 45 to 50 feet away before we start to see the signal strength drop too far to be effective. In fact, you could get further depending on the setup of your home. However, for 5 and 6 gigahertz, around 35 feet away, we ran into some issues. For 6 gigahertz, the issues would start to show up around 30 feet. And at about 35 feet, we could see 5 gigahertz drop off too much. In some cases, it'll be closer or further depending on what the signals had to go through, but those are general numbers for you. Now, when you read our data and our graphs, anytime you get under -70 dBm, so like this point here, your signal strength is definitely not going to be reliable and you're not going to have good Wi-Fi coverage. So just baselining all of this, 2.4 gigahertz goes really far, and most homes are not going to have to think about more than 1 or 2 units for that frequency. Why is that going down? What the? I don't know. I'm trying in life, but from the 5 gigahertz standpoint, I'm able to cover my home reliably with about 2 units. Now, our home is about 1,600 square feet, but that doesn't include the basement. That's just how they measure homes here in Canada. And keep in mind, we have fairly light materials in our home. There's no brick or concrete above our basement. So we don't have a lot of interference coming from the materials. In my home, the units are also in the middle. I have 1 in the basement, I have 1 on the main floor. That's probably too much coverage when I'm on the main floor, but it's okay with this system to do that. You don't want to go overboard and get too many units, but I could easily add a 3rd here and not have any concerns. In fact, in some ways, it's beneficial that your nodes are really close together. If you can't put your units in the middle of your home because of where your internet service provider brings in their service or outlets, then you may end up needing an extra unit just to cover your home right. That's just for basic coverage. And I want to explain that the signal strength is often very much correlated with the speed you're going to achieve. In fact, here's a graph of our results on speed versus that distance that helps you understand that as that signal strength drops off, we see a drop off in relative speed. What that means is you're gonna wanna locate these points near to where you'll be using the internet quite often. For safety reasons, I'll recommend that you don't keep these within a foot of where you'll be sitting or staying regularly, but get them close enough that your 5 and 6 gigahertz signals will be between about -30 dBm and up to about -60. And you should have really good speed throughout your home. Now, I use an app called Wi-Fi Man on my Android phone in order to measure these kinds of things. That can really help you to know where you're gonna have problems with signal strength or to diagnose problems. The outdoor points are different. They can actually reach up to 15,000 square feet. That's a huge space, and I actually walked down my street to see if that was the case. It is. It goes quite far, but its speed is not going to be as much as you will get from the other units. And there is one special feature for these outdoor points. So if you're someone who has a farmhouse or an acreage and you want to get internet out to a house or a building that's quite far away, the outdoor points can be placed up to 1,000 feet away from each other. As long as these have a clear line of sight, they can essentially beam internet to each other. Again, the speed will not be really high between the outdoor units, and we couldn't test that because I didn't have two of them, but this is a really great option for those of you with buildings far away from your home. Later on in the video, I'm going to talk about speed and the results we got and how there's certain things that we can do to make the speed better in our home. But from a basic standpoint, if you can wire with Ethernet cable between your units, then things will be faster. In fact, let me explain some really important facts about the way Eero communicates between their mesh points. So you're probably wondering, do I have to wire with an Ethernet cable between my Eero points? What I'll tell you is that generally it is great to do that. You gain some reliability, some speed, and in some cases, additional device capacity on your Wi-Fi network. However, the way these have been designed actually supports a completely wireless network. Eero has done one thing that is really ingenious. One of the biggest problems in any network is what's called backhaul and front haul. That's the name for data or traffic that moves between your Eero points. So if you're streaming something on your phone on the top floor of your home near your Eero up there, and then you have a second Eero on the main floor that is connected to the modem in your home, then the data going to your phone will have to pass through both of your Eeros in order to get to your phone. If you decide to upload something, maybe you need to upload a very long YouTube video from your phone, it again has to go through both of your Eeros. So when information has to go back through your network and out to the internet, you call that front haul. When it's going from the internet through your network to a device that's deep within, that's called backhaul. Either way, that data has to transfer either wired or wirelessly throughout your home. And because you can be running multiple things at the same time, that backhaul and front haul traffic can be the thing that takes up the most speed and or bandwidth on your network. To lessen the impact of this, Eero has allowed backhaul and front haul traffic to use whichever frequency is best. They're going to make those decisions, but they will in fact switch based on the situation. So, if your device is connected to 5 gigahertz, maybe your phone is, they'll use 6 gigahertz. If your mesh points are too far apart to use 6 gigahertz, they'll choose to use something else. Now, if you place your units too far apart, they will end up using 2.4 gigahertz all the time. And that could slow down your network a lot. It can be important to place these nodes a little closer together if you're going to use a wireless backhaul. Now, if you have wired the units together with Ethernet cable, they're going to use that for that haul traffic. And that leaves your Eero points and the Wi-Fi system to connect just to your devices. That is a pretty big benefit, and it really helps speed up your overall network and keeps more devices on the network reliably. One thing you need to do before you set up your units is you need to check that you have all the cabling. You're going to get this one cable in the box, and that is truly all you need in terms of Ethernet cables. That's the one that is going to connect from your router into your internet service provider's modem. But If you have a modem / router combo unit from your ISP, what you will need to do is either get the instructions to put the router component into what is called bridge mode, or get your ISP to do that for you with you on the phone. They might have to be part of your setup process. Now, you don't want to place your router into bridge mode until you have the first Eero in place. And that's because you will essentially eliminate the security of your network if you don't have a router in kind of its full protective mode, okay? So talk to your ISP before you do this part. In the past, I have actually gone through the setup of my first Eero and then talked to the support team with my internet provider. That's a decent method, but it can introduce a little delay. But just make sure you have that initial conversation first. And most people already have a mesh system or a Wi-Fi system in their home. So if you have that, get the name of your Wi-Fi and your password from your existing system. If you have multiple, if you have a guest account, you'll want that too. And if you use the same Wi-Fi name and password, a lot of your existing Wi-Fi devices in your home will just reconnect once you're done the initial setup. The one thing to note is when you do the initial sign in to the Eero app, you're going to want to use your Amazon account that you use with their Miss A application, okay? This enables a lot of those smart home hub features. It's very important that you use that same account in the Miss A app as the Eero app. So that's one thing you really want to do as you're getting started, you're getting the Eero app and you're preparing to do this. So for now, we can get into the app, do this setup, and I'll show you some of the back and forth that I had during my initial setup of these. As we start the install process with this is a Cat6a cable. Now, it is capable of up to 10 gigabits per second. So, you can look at the ratings of the cables you have in your home. We'll put up a little chart for you right now. But as you go to build out your network, if you're going to between your modem and your first router, your first mesh point, you will probably want to have a Cat6a cable, or better to get those kinds of 10 gigabit per second speeds. When you're going between the two mesh points, you'll also want to look at faster cables if you are using that cabled method. So here we are. I'm in the Eero app. You'll need to download that. There is QR codes. You could search for it on the App Store. The first question is a very critical one. So, are you new to Eero or do you already have an account? Well, if you have an account with Amazon and you use Amazon's voice assistant at all, you will want to hit already have an account. Then you can sign in with Amazon. Now, I've signed in to my Amazon account. It's down here where we kind of hide those things for our privacy purposes. This will help you to link your Eero system to Amazon, give you some management features, and help with the smart home components. Now they're telling us, okay, we need a gateway Eero device right here. We need our power cord, we need our Ethernet cord, and we need a modem and fiber ONT. So that's just the technical term for your modem. If you're using different equipment, there's actually a little guide right here, and you need to make sure that your phone has Bluetooth turned on and access to cellular data. Now we're going to unplug our old modem and our old router from power. Then we're going to connect this in to the modem, and finally we're going to plug in our Eero device and then reconnect our modem. So you want to do it in this specific order. They're really serious about this. Don't do it in any other order. It can cause issues. I've seen it where people have left their modem on with power, and when you first plug this in, it can expose a lot of devices if you've got a hardwired network. So just do it as they say it here. So now I have unplugged my old modem, okay, and I've unplugged my old router. Now I have to connect my gateway Eero device to my modem using the Ethernet cable included in the box. And then we're going to plug this in to power first, and then we're going to plug in the modem back into power. Now this right here is my modem. This might be what yours looked like. I had mine mounted on the wall, and you can see basically there's a black fiber cable coming into it, and then there's a yellow Ethernet cable that's going out to the rest of my home. So you're gonna want to turn this off first. And oh, look, I don't really have another port for Ethernet, do I? But there we go. That's off. Next, I have to go to my router. So this is my router coming into my home. I switch quite often, and right here is the cable that comes in from that modem. I know it was yellow downstairs, but just how I've wired my home, this is that cable. So basically, the cable from your modem that goes into your existing router is the one you're going to want to prepare, and this is where I'm going to be placing my Eero 7. So I'm going to unplug this cable, and for now I'll leave that other cable because that goes to the rest of my network. I just want to leave that one in there so I can tell the difference between my two cables. So now I have my network down, or at least I have the major components down. My Wi-Fi is out at this point, okay? I'm going to take out my other mesh points. Right now, we don't want any interference going on. So if you have a mesh system, unplug that now too. Now, I've actually plugged in 3 cables, okay? I did this one first, then I did this one second, and I did this one third. That's the power cable, okay? And now the unit is booting up, and it is showing me a blue flashing light. That's what you want for setup. These 2 cables, this first one is the one coming from my modem. I plugged it into the 10 gigabit per second port. And then this is going out to the rest of my network. So if you have more wired components, maybe you have a network switch like I do, that's going out to my big network switch in my home. So I wanted to use that full 10 gigabit per second port. I've chosen to prioritize those things, and then I'll use these for devices around this unit, maybe another little network switch. So we're done the 3 different components here. We're ready to go, but you might be wondering, where am I supposed to place these units? For most people, the first one is going to be right next to their modem, especially with a cable like that. Now, I actually placed my first one in the middle of my house. There's a video that I will link below that teaches you why I did that and how I did that in my home. So I'm going to hit that little arrow button, and what the app is asking me for, it says determine the relative position. It's going to ask for location permissions. So right now it's looking for a gateway. It's doing that through Bluetooth. I'm probably not close enough. I'll probably have to go and get closer. So it travels the distance basically that Bluetooth can throughout your home. You got to be fairly close to the unit when you do this. There you go. You can see it didn't work. Now, if it's not plugged in and blinking blue, then it's not in pairing mode. You might want to reboot the Eero unit. And the other thing you might want to reboot is your Bluetooth. So you can just toggle that on or off and then try this again. So there you go. I just toggled my Bluetooth off and then on again. I'll probably fail this process one more time. Nope, there you go. It found it. So I even did that in the middle of it trying to find this. So if your ISP supports more than 2.5 gigabits per second, you'll probably want to connect using your Ethernet cable to one of the 10 ports, which is what I've done in my home. Now that you're paired, just hit next. So now it's trying to make a connection to the internet. It's basically going through that cable. This is where you really got to follow those steps to the T. You know, I had forgot to even plug in my modem again. So now I've done that, and I'm going to hit try again, and it's looking for this gateway, and then it's going to try and connect to the internet again. So now it's connected to my internet connection through that cable. And before we create your network, I got to agree to some terms, okay? You could read those terms and conditions. I'm just going to go forward. Now, where is this Eero Max 7? So it's this one specifically that we're talking about, and this is in our living room. Now I have to give the Wi-Fi name and password I'd like to use. One of the great things about Wi-Fi connectivity today is that really you can use the same Wi-Fi name and password from your last system. So as long as you have those credentials from your last system, you can have them saved or written on a piece of paper somewhere. I know that's what a lot of people do. Then you're just going to type them in again here, and most of your home will reconnect to this system automatically. Although Eero does have some security measures that don't always allow that to happen, and some devices have those too. But lots of your home will just reconnect if you use the same Wi-Fi name and password. So I just typed in my last Wi-Fi name and password, and now we're setting it up. We're registering the device. It's now all done. And if you have a 2-pack or a 3-pack, you're going to add another Eero. Otherwise, you hit finish setup and you're all done. So I'm going to hit add another Eero. And now we'll talk about adding our second one. I'm not going to go through 100% of the ways to determine your second or your third unit's placement, but you in general should cut off your home into segments. You can check for dead spots. So now that you have your network set up, your internet or your Wi-Fi network set up, you can actually move through your home and see the signal strength. Now, this tells you a little bit about how your network is going to behave in your home, but there's actually a pretty good tool. So I've opened up an application called Wi-Fi Man, and this is able to analyze a lot about your Wi-Fi network. This is available on Android. This app is really good because not only can you do things like speed tests, but you can also see your signal strength. This allows you to have a look at the signal strength for the different bands of Wi-Fi throughout your home. So what I can do is I can have a look here in the scan tab at all the different networks around my home and the signal strength. There's also channels being chosen right now. We won't talk about that just yet, but I can see these on 2.4, 5, and 6 gigahertz. So at 6 gigahertz, I have my signal strength at about minus 80 dBm where I am. You can go walk throughout your home, and you want to keep that around minus 70 dBm. If you can. Anything better than that. And when I say better than that, the numbers will get lower, so it'll go to like minus 45 dBm. That actually means a stronger signal strength. As you get a higher negative number, you're getting less and less signal strength. More likely, you can see it just went to minus 81, you're more likely to have interference problems and connection drops. So you can look even my 5 gigahertz where I'm sitting, it's at minus 70 dBm, and you will find that 2.4 gigahertz is a little stronger usually, minus 50 dBm, really strong signal strength. I'd be able to stay connected in using my 2.4 gigahertz network. So an app like this, just going into that scan tab and kind of going in to your network that you're connected to, so you have to be connected for this to work really well and for you to get this page, that can show you your signal strength as you move throughout your home, and you can locate your second point where it's going to help you the most. Now that I've chosen a point, you can choose to wire it in or wirelessly connect the two, okay? In general, place it out in the open to maximize the performance. Having big things like televisions, big electronics, big appliances next to this, metal objects can block Wi-Fi signals or at least cause them to not be as strong in certain places. So now they're saying, okay, go ahead, plug in your Eero device. I'm going to plug it in to both my power and my Ethernet network in this case, because I'm creating a wired network. You don't have to do that in this step. So I've plugged in my Eero device. I'm just going to hit next, and it's finding it again through that Bluetooth connection. So it should be pulsing blue. And again, they're saying, hey, you know, you might want to connect to those 10 gigabit per second ports if you have that much speed from your ISP, or inside of my network, I'm using cables that are capable of that. So now we found it. It's going to try and connect it to the network, and then we should be good to go. Where's this one? This one's in my basement, and we're going to be adding a third unit outside in just a moment. So here we are. We're ready to add another Eero. If you're done, just hit Finish Setup. When you're done adding all the different indoor units you have, you'll just hit Finish Setup. You come to the end of that process, and then you'll end up on this page. Now, I have an outdoor unit. I'm going to do that basic setup now, but you do it a little differently. So you're not just adding a new Eero. You're actually going to hit the plus up at the top there, and you're going to add an outdoor Eero. Now, they're going to give us a full guide on all of this. So there's a placement guide. You want it 6 to 15 feet off the ground, 1 foot of clearance above and below this device. You don't want it near like big satellite dishes, things like that. Trees and large objects will lower the performance of this. And there's actually an option where you can have 2 of these. If they have line of sight to each other, they can basically broadcast the network to each other. Then place it within range of your Eero network. I've already shown you how you diagnose how strong your network is. Okay, so now I'm going to hit next. Get ready to connect your Eero. Okay, and so I've assembled the cable, I've plugged it in, and down here is the light for this. Now, it's actually solid blue because I had paired before, but this will be blinking blue after a few minutes. That's the status you want it in as you do this next step. There is an option to scan the barcode right there, but now it's looking for that. It's made a connection between the two using Bluetooth, just the same as the other things. And now we're testing the connection. So this is before mounting, okay? You're checking the connection, and now they're saying, hey, your placement looks good. Well, okay, if you want to go back, you can retest that. If you're wanting to move this, go move this now, put it in its location, get it mounted, or at least set the location, and then mount it once it's told you that, hey, this is a good location for this device. Then go and mount it. Don't do it before then. And they do give you some instructions right here. Very simple instructions, couple of screws, get it on the bracket, and make sure the cable's weather seal is in place. You cannot mount this unit sideways, upside down, any of those things. Of course, at the end of any of these, you want to do new upgrades or updates for your firmware. So that's all going on. Don't unplug anything, and we'll get to the rest of the setup. They're going to try and sell you things like Eero Plus. You'll have to decide if you want any of these things. I don't really think that it's necessary, but we'll talk about that a little later in today's video. Just to help you get the other connectors installed, if you're using a different one or a different Ethernet cable here, you're going to put that on first. Then you're going to place on your rubber gasket. You can let that other piece fall a little bit. Just get that rubber gasket on. And then you want the third component pushed on here. And then you will push that rubber gasket in. Now make sure the little lip of the gasket is on the outside. And as you do this, just make sure you're not bending any of these pins. Try and get kind of each side pushed in there. Then once you have it in, it'll slide in pretty nicely. You've got that. And then you can tighten this up to create a good seal on all of that. Okay. And now you put this into here. Make sure you hear it click in there, and then push the whole connector in. Get it stable there. And now twist till it's tight. We'll get to the entire management of your system in just a moment. There's a lot of great tools there. But after you have done the initial setup, you should have a number of things that are already connected to your Wi-Fi. If you are finding some of the things in your home haven't reconnected and you used the same Wi-Fi name and password as your previous system, then those items, they just might not reconnect automatically. They might just need a simple reboot. And most things in my home just took a power cycle if they didn't reconnect. Now, if you didn't use the same Wi-Fi name and password, I got bad news for you. You're gonna have to reset a lot of things and reset them up. Also, if you haven't already done so, if you are using Ethernet cables between your units, you can plug them in now. Depending on how you did the setup, you might have done it with a wireless method, but you can switch between wireless and wired communication between your Eeros at any time. So don't feel stuck with what you did in the initial setup. And finally, if you're not using the ports in the back of your Eeros, you can use them to plug into network switches or into specific devices in your home. I would recommend that you either plug into a network switch or you plug into high bandwidth devices like TVs, streaming devices, or computers. Those are great uses for these ports if you're not already using them to connect to your other Eero points. Before I go outside in -30, I just wanted to show you the options with this mount. Now, what I've done is I've taken the screw out of one of these vinyl mounts. You just hand loosen that out. And now I've placed it in here, and you want to get this perfectly upright. Then you take a Phillips screwdriver and you get it tightened on there as close as you can to perfectly upright. Okay? Take this with you and again, repeat the process on the other side of the unit. This is your leveling side, so you'll want to make little adjustments here. Put this on the screw. And again, when you get towards the end, get it close and just tighten. Make sure this is upright. You want these to be very, very level as you do this. And that's looking pretty good right there. So there we go. That's how you do that. The only difference with the regular mount is that these screws are longer. They're going through the same spots, and you're just gonna probably use a drill in a lot of cases. And you have anchor mounts here, depending on the surface you're going into. Now, once you have this kind of mounted, this helps you with evening things out, okay? So you may want this onto your siding a little bit if you're using the siding mounts, or you know, your fence or whatever post or wooden thing you're mounting to here. So that's what these are intended to do for you. They're just helping with the stability. And your final step to the process is just pushing it on this little mount. You just slide it on like that. So once you're all done, that's how you do it. Before we go and install our outdoor version, there's a couple of things you need to understand. Now, this cable, it's connected up and it has sealed onto this. It's actually a very easy thing to do here with what Eero has given you. This adapter is 30 watts and there is a little mounting port here, a little tripod mounting port. So you can actually attach this to a few other mounts if you'd like to get more of this kind of up. But one of the options is that you can power this with PoE and wire it into your network therefore. So I was able to pull this off. And what I'll tell you is this was inside of here, and all I did was get the little piece tucked in before I did this, and then I actually just pulled it through and this popped out. Now I can undo that just by Taking that off, and this last piece should slide right off. The one thing you gotta watch with this one, just make sure that little pin or that little connector piece here is tucked in as you get it through there. But there you go. Now you have the ability to reseal this on a new cable. You're just gonna pop this into here, put your Ethernet cable through all three of these pieces, and you're good to go. So this will be used if you want to use a different cable than this for the power over Ethernet connector. You're going outdoors and you want to get a good seal on that cable. Okay, you take it off that way. For your Ethernet cables, okay, this is called an M22 connector, and your cable has to be compatible with that. If you can have kind of thicker or wider connectors, there are some flat ones, they're not going to work with that. So it's very important to know it's an M22 connector. A couple things you will need: a power drill and 9/64-inch drill bit when using anchors, or 7/64-inch when not using the anchor. So you're going to pre-drill. If you're doing vinyl installs, you're not going to need a drill because you'll be using these. And there is actually a little strap kit. So, you know, with a piece of equipment like this, probably makes a lot of good sense to get a strap kit. What happens there is you basically run it through here, and then you run it around your unit. Now, I have just some basic tie straps that I will use for that, but you know, I think depending on your own situation, you might want to look at that. We'll talk about things like clearance as we get out there. Let's go and get this installed. It's minus 30 out, so I've got like minutes to do this. Oh, yeah, it's cold. I've got an outlet here. Again, you want things 6 to 15 feet in the air, okay? So I can either put it out here next to one of my cameras, or I can put it in that corner or over there. That's what I have outside. So now, just gonna tuck this under. It's a little hard to get it in there. I'm gonna push a little bit, and there we go. So now I just want to get this so there's a little bit of tension. Try and move back so you hopefully, but I don't want to push too hard on my siding in each one of these spots. I just want it fairly secure. For this, you've got a couple of cable wraps. So first things first, I'm going to get this mounted, and we're going to be fairly light with it so we don't break anything on our siding since I'm using that one. But there we go, mounted. And now, crap, I dropped it. Now, I did drop it in the snow. We're just gonna press it in. Now it's gotta go in the top one. And we're gonna come through there, and we're sealed up. Now, for this, you do have a tripod mount right there. So you can actually get another one of those clips with a little mount piece, and you can get that on the side of your house. And, you know, before things kind of freeze up out here, which they are instantly, the cable's really hard to move, I'm going to cable wrap most of this. You want to know how cold that was? Look. Not only can our little Eero Outdoor 7 service up to 100 devices on its own, but it has an extremely long range. What I'll tell you is that it's best to get this unit a little away from your home, at least in my experience. I think for most people, you're not gonna need an outdoor point unless you have quite a large property. But what I found with my Eero Outdoor is that sometimes my phone was staying connected to it when I come into my home instead of those Eero points in my home. When I was kind of between them, sometimes it could choose the outdoor unit because it covers such a large area. So I think just get it a little away from your home. You shouldn't run into this problem. But there's this really interesting feature. I've told you a little bit about it. I need to make sure you know about it though with these Eero Outdoors. Not only do they have a range of 15,000 square feet, but you can use the outdoor points to have Wi-Fi broadcast over 1,000 feet away from your home. As in, that's the starting point, and you'd have 15,000 square feet from there. As long as two outdoor points have a clear line of sight between them, you can install two of these units and have Wi-Fi outdoors at both locations. Now, even better, this can continue with a third location. So you can hop along to buildings that are 1,000 feet apart. In general, you're gonna want to install these at between 6 to 15 feet above ground. That should give you a good clearance and a good line of sight. You'll also want one of your units either wired into your network or wirelessly within range of one of your other Eeros, so that that true mesh system works. The speeds will not be incredible, but for farmhouses or for acreages that have buildings far away, this is an incredible option, and actually the only one I really know about today. The other thing to think about is whether you can get an Ethernet cable out to those buildings. I'll tell you why that's important when we get to the speed component of today's video. But even if you don't have wires out there and just have a little power, this is quite the option. Now that we have the system set up, I want to take you through some of the basics here on the main page. This will help you to manage the system really efficiently. Now, the whole page can be tapped on here on the main page. We can add an existing network. So if you're ever adding a second system to your home, that's how you do it. You can switch between different networks. Maybe you have two houses. You can switch between them. If you want to see details on your internet, you can tap in here. You can run a speed test, and there is a feature for Eero Internet Backup that can use cellular connection. So if you want to back up here, you can do that. That subscription is kind of down here, and we'll talk a little bit about that later. Each of your routers or each of your points, I'm going to call them both names. I know some networking people get upset with me, but here is where you can go in, view lots of the details, see how it's connected. Now you'll notice right here, there is a statement on connection. The internet is connected to the 10 gigabit per second port 4. And you'll notice when I follow that, it takes me back to my overall internet connection. I can adjust the status light if I'd like. I can even change the brightness or turn that on and off. And I can see details on all the devices that are connected to it. So if you're wondering what port you're into with some of your wired connections, it's right there. The first one is kind of our first one from the internet. So we're going from our modem to our first router or point, and then we go out to these other points. This little symbol denotes that it is a wired connection, whereas this symbol denotes that it is wired through power over Ethernet, and this symbol denotes that it is wireless, and we've got an issue with that. We'll talk about that. Inside of our other routing devices, we can see details on things like IP address if you need them, and you can check your software version, but right within there, just kind of set this and forget about it. Do an update at a preferred time, and let the updates kind of roll through your Eero system. You never have to worry about that again. There's also a lot of device information. So if you're wondering some of these things, I use some diagnostic tools, and this can be really beneficial for me. You can check all that info out. For each of your routers or points, you can remove them by tapping up here, or restart them. So restart can help you just if you're having a kind of a problem with one of your points, maybe you have too much connected to it. You can kind of see I have 43 devices on this one. Maybe I want to balance things out because this one is only showing 16 devices connected to it. So maybe if I reboot that, I'm going to have some things shift over to the other one, just maybe rebalance things a little bit. For my outdoor point, this one is connected through power over Ethernet at this point in my home. It can connect wirelessly and in this method, and we can see the power that is being used by that power over Ethernet. So you get a little extra information there on that one. This is what's called Eero built-in. Some of your Echoes and your Echo Dots can actually extend your Wi-Fi network. So you can see that this one is not on my main network. I actually have to go and change that. We've changed kind of network names with Eero. And so for me to use this to extend my network, I have to actually reset up that Echo. But you can turn this Eero built-in on and off through the settings. And it's actually usually here. But because it's not actually on that, I have to tap there. So you can see the little radio button. That's usually how it looks. And now because I'm not using that as a Wi-Fi extension device, it's gone from here. Now it's just something connected to the network. We can also see all of our devices that are online, how many are currently offline. So this can sometimes help you troubleshoot if you have a device that should be online. Maybe you want to come in here, kind of reboot that device, check it out, see what's going on. You can also go into individual devices, and they kind of show you some of your more interacted with devices here. You can go into any of these devices, and you can set a profile. Now, a profile is something you want to build. You can see you can schedule pauses. So if you've got like 3 or 4 things from your kids, you want to set up a pause for bedtime. You can do that with a profile. You can also filter certain content out and track usage. So you can create profiles. I don't really use those. I'm not looking for all that detail. But one of the things that I do is I sometimes reserve an IP address. So you have an IP address. This might be really important for a lot of things you work with. So inside of this, what you're going to do is, first of all, you can see all of your existing reservations that you have. You can add a new reservation and you can just say, okay, I want, for example, my iPad to always be at this IP address. Now I'm just going to hit save. And now every time that connects, it's going to go to the same IP address. This is really important for smart home stuff, just kind of prepping you for that. You can also add some rules to specific devices. So if you've got to open up a port, for example, this is how you do it with each specific device. You just type in your port number and then you choose the protocol. And that's the biggest thing. You know, you might want to review some of the activity. Some of these things are, again, kind of behind an Eero subscription. So you'll have to have a look at whether you want that detailed data. This is enough for me most of the time. The weekly data is just fine. Again, you can have device information. Pausing a device stops it from connecting to the internet, and you can also block devices if they should not be on your network. Now, there's a couple of other big features here that I want to give you for managing your Eero system. There's all the devices tab, and you can filter and look for things, and you can explore that on your own. And there's the activity tab. Those are big, important features. If you want more activity, again, it's that subscription. But inside of settings, this is where we get a couple of big features. So if you ever want to change your Wi-Fi name or the password associated with it, right there, you can go in there and change that. Right here is the guest network. Now, if you ever want to share, you'd think you'd have to go into that tab, but you can actually long hold on that and then send that out. If you go into the guest network, you can see both the credentials on your main network and your guest network. The guest network can be very nice because you can just share a QR code or Wi-Fi details with friends and family. It also keeps them a little bit segregated. Actually, Eero does a lot in terms of segregating kind of your main network from your guest network. So you can come in, you can change the name of that SSID and the password on that. You will see it's right here. So there's my guest network. So now you can see I'm connected to that guest account. I have access to the internet, but I don't have access necessarily to all the different components of my network. There is some segregation that goes on, so it is kind of nice that way. You can see that the signal strength is fair right now, and I'm actually connected to 5 and 6 gigahertz. So it does put out the guest network SSID at all the frequencies that is the same as your main network. Now, talking about that, let's go into network settings. The biggest thing I want to show you here is right here. Restart the network. That helps you reboot all your different Eero devices. That's actually where they've tucked it away. Now, we'll go through lots of these other settings later in the videos. When it comes to smart homes, every model of Eero 7 is really helpful. Now, no matter the model you purchase, you will have a Zigbee hub on it. You will also have a Thread border router and Bluetooth connectivity for Matter's use. Now, as I said earlier in the video, if you use your Amazon account that you use with the Miss A app, then this will enable a lot of features automatically. But you will want to go into your settings tab and then go into network settings and make sure that at the bottom of those, you have Thread turned on. In general, I would say you also should turn on the keychain syncing option, but that does have a privacy component to it because it's sharing that data with Apple and Google keychain services. It'll help you to set up smart home devices in other smart home apps aside from Amazon. That allows you to use your Eero Thread border router potentially in those apps. Then you want to check the Amazon connected home settings at the very bottom of that page. So just make sure that Thread is turned on, and then this is the next place you want to head into. This is the Amazon connected home. Now there's some important features in here. So this one, it's very simple, very easy to understand. You actually don't really have to do anything here. It just acts as a smart home hub for Zigbee devices. Now, if I tap on Zigbee devices, it will actually go over to the Amazon Miss A application, and it will be trying to find Zigbee devices. You can actually do it from this app, and that's the better way to do this going forward. I'll show you that in a minute, but the other thing you might want to do is turn on frustration-free setup. Now, this does have some privacy implications, so you do want to think about that. What's going to happen is basically you're going to be giving the credentials from your Eero network both in Wi-Fi and Thread to Amazon. So when you buy products on Amazon, and they actually have a quick link to that in Amazon, but when you buy them, you can choose what's called the frustration-free setup, and it should provide your credentials right to the device before you get it. Right here, and it's kind of over on the side on other Amazon pages, but this is how you can link it and simplify setup, do that frustration-free setup, and you'll have smart products that you basically just gotta screw in and it'll be ready to go. The last feature is a little more intensive, and it does maybe change how many units you buy. Echoes and Echo Dots today, if they're on your Miss A account, they can sometimes extend your Eero Wi-Fi network. So you have to turn on Eero built-in, and then you have to turn it on for certain devices. You can also do this in another part of the app, actually on the home page. But right here, if I turn that on, then that Echo is actually extending my Wi-Fi. Now, they're not really fast network devices. They're not capable of holding on to a lot of Wi-Fi devices. So you really want to use that in the situation where you need just that little bit of extension. Now that we have those features turned on, inside of the Amazon app, when you are ready to add a new Zigbee device or a new Matter over Thread device, so I'm in the Devices tab, I'm going to hit the plus up here, and I'm going to hit Add Device. The easiest way to find things is by brand, and sometimes you can do that and it'll all just work out. But if you ever have trouble finding it by brand or the type of device, head down to Other, and suddenly you have those options for connecting smart home products. Zigbee, if you have a Zigbee device like a Zigbee smart plug or a Zigbee sensor, you're going to tap that, and it helps to be near your Eero device or within about 30 feet. You want to be probably closer than that when you do this. You put the device in pairing mode, and it should find it right through that. And it's the same thing with Matter Remember we talked about thread? Well, Matter devices can be set up here. They have a logo on them, and you're basically going to put in a code and kind of follow the instructions here. So there's a QR code. You're going to scan it or type in a numeric one. Most Matter devices have both, and when you scan it, it'll basically go through the setup. And because your Eeros have thread on them, they should connect to that thread network. So that's how you use this. From that point on, you can then control your devices just like any other products you have in your smart home. They're going to show up here. They sometimes have funny names, so you might want to rename them, but they're going to show up at the top of this devices list as new devices that were recently added. I know some of you might be wondering if you can control by voice your Eero network. That actually seems to have gone away. There's no more help files or anything related to that from Eero. So right now, I don't see any voice control. I've tried a number of messages, a number of functions and things. It's not working with Amazon's voice assistant. Everybody's speed inside of their home is gonna differ. Okay, now most of your results will be based on your internet service provider's speed that they give you in your plan. There is an upper limit to Wi-Fi 7 speeds, but in general, most plans will not hit that limit. So your limiting factor for your speed, if you're checking that on a site like fast.com, is likely based on what your internet provider gives you. I've already shared our results earlier in the video in some ways, but here are the basics. We used Wi-Fi Man to measure all of these, but you can use fast.com or another site. Our maximum speed with our internet provider is 940 megabits per second. So that's the maximum we should achieve. And we were very close to that all throughout our home. Every time I saw the speed fall off, it was because we were using another part of the system really heavily, or because we were further away from one of our points. Essentially, speed falls off based on the signal strength, as well as, a few other factors, but this can be one of the biggest reasons that your speed drops off. The other factor that really affected our speed is that type of backhaul or front haul that we're doing. We've already talked about this earlier in the video, but that's the data that has to travel between your different mesh points. Now, in general, I'll recommend at least Cat 6A cables throughout your home if you're gonna connect through wires to these. But if you do connect these by wire, we did see a little bit of an increase in our overall speeds. Now, where I did see a big change was when I connected the outdoor unit using the Power over Ethernet network. I'm using a very old network switch to do this, and it does not have a lot of speed. So I could definitely achieve even better with a better network switch. But we were getting up to 5 times the speed going wired over wireless with this kind of a unit and the distances that it travels. To summarize, the closer you are to your points, the faster speed you will likely get. However, you will likely be limited by your internet provider more than the Wi-Fi 6, 6E, or 7 devices you have in your home. And if you can, use Ethernet cables between your points and that PoE option with the outdoor. Now, if you want to see how I redesign my network in order to do all of this and in order to achieve these kinds of speeds all the time, you can watch the video I linked down below, which talks about how I redid my network and got a lot better speeds out of it. So I'm in network settings and I want to give you kind of those last few details. This might be where you spend a little bit of a time kind of searching for some important settings, especially if your ISP, you're having problems with your internet connection. They might ask you to kind of come in here. Now, your WAN IP address, that's the IP address that you have basically from the internet, from your internet service provider. That's your outside IP. This right here, DHCP and NAT, shows your internal IP. So this is basically the first IP that you have inside of your network, and we'll go into that. Nowadays, you probably want to turn on IPv6 in general. That's going to help you. And ISP settings. This is maybe where they'll ask you to change your WAN type. They might ask you to change some of these things if they want you to use a static IP for your internet. There's also an Eero simple service here. Wired Eeros can just join the network automatically. So if you do go and add points in the future, just tap that, lets you get them on the network really simply. DHCP, again, this is inside of your network. So we have an automatic setting, which I would say is going to work for most people. But if you want to set a manual IP, and you want to change kind of your subnet IP and all of those ranges, the subnet mask, if you'd like to kind of dole out more addresses, these things are all here. I'm not going to talk a lot about DNS, but some people want to modify that. It's basically the primary and secondary servers that you might want to adjust. So if you want to adjust this, a lot of people use Cloudflare, a couple other services for this. This can speed up and slow down your connections to a lot of sites. So just think about that, know what you're doing there, but you can change your DNS there. Something that you can potentially turn on is called local DNS caching. We use names like Eero.com to surf the web. So computers rely on numbers, right? Well, DNS turns domain names into IPs. And basically, it's storing some of this information inside of your network. You do have to reboot if you turn that on. It can improve things. I haven't really seen any differences myself. UPnP, this is used for a lot of streaming devices. There is some security gaps around UPnP, so maybe just have a little look at those. But in general, you're going to want that turned on. Eco efficiency, I actually turned this off. Down here is called SQM, so it's basically queue management, smart queue management of how Wi-Fi traffic is moving through your home. When you're streaming 4K video while also playing the web or playing a video game, SQM is just kind of helping dole out the capacity on your network where it's needed. Now, I've actually just turned this on recently. I'm not seeing big differences, and but you might with this if you're having some trouble with those bigger devices, maybe taking too much bandwidth from other things. Multi-link operation. This is actually a really important thing for your Eero system. I'm currently connected to an MLO network because you can see my phone says it's connected to 5 and 6 gigahertz frequency. Now that might seem like a really weird thing, but some phones are now capable of this. There's also other devices out there that are capable of connecting to 2 frequencies at the same time. So turning this on can give you faster speeds, lower latency. It's one of the best features of Wi-Fi 7 in general. Client steering. Now, this is just basically as you move throughout your home, the different devices are going to get connected to your different access points. You want that turned on. WPA3, some people will want to turn that on. I don't think it's a terrible idea, but it may not be required for anything you've connected in your home. And in some cases, it can cause compatibility issues. So they are saying, Eero can also transition any devices that don't support WPA3 to WPA2, but certain devices might not be compatible with this. So if you turn that on, you see some devices, some older stuff drop off the network or can't connect anymore, you might want to turn that off. But this gives you a great idea of some of those more detailed settings. All the links to all the different Eero products are down below in the description. So are all of the links to the different videos that I've referenced in today's. I also include a couple of product links to things like the little clips that you saw when I installed this on the outside of my home. Now, if you're building a smart home, this is one of the cornerstones, a good network. It's so important, but if you don't do some critical things, you're probably not going to get the most out of it. So I've put our playlist of guides related to Wi-Fi and networks on screen right there. Those videos will make sure you get the most out of this new Eero system. So check that out. Otherwise, thanks for watching today. And of course, live smart.